It's podcast 60, another fishing podcast 60, and this is going to be a treat today because I have the best boat rigger in Minnesota here with me today, Taylor Spraungel, Spraungel Performance Marine. He may be the best boat rigger in the whole country. Here he is. We're going to be talking all things boat rigging. There he is. Look at what a handsome man. And this guy is the absolute man. If you are a nut like I am, super OCD, want your boat to be perfectly rigged, Taylor's the man. We're going to go through like all of it, like what he did to my boat, just what's all involved in getting boats rigged, the trending things in fishing electronics right now. We're going to talk about all of it. Let's get started.
This isn't another fishing podcast. This is another fishing podcast.
All right, Taylor. Well, I appreciate you doing this, dude, very much. And welcome to another fishing podcast. We talked about doing this sometime, and I'm glad you're able to join me. So thanks for stopping by.
Yeah, no problem, man. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, so I think the first thing is just tell me, go into specifics about, what you do, when you started when you started your business, like how did you get into this line of work? Just tell me a little bit about yourself and then, how you started Spraungel Performance Marine.
So I started in the marine industry when I was 18 years old. The family business was always masonry. And I did that kind of right out of high school, did that as my summer job and realized that I really didn't like it. And honestly, how it all started was when I was a young kid. Obviously I had my fishing boats growing up and stuff like that. My parents and grandparents were into fishing, so I was around that stuff. And when I was a kid, I raced RC cars. So I got to know, how DC electrical works, battery storage, stuff like that, how a brushed motor works, all that stuff. So I had always repaired all my own stuff, and I obviously done all my own rigging and stuff like that. And, I just kind of assumed that I was going to live the masonry life and do that and whatever. But what happened was I had an old trolling motor that I needed a part for. It was a Minn Kota Maxim from like 2000. And I called around to places to ask if they had an old armature for it. And somebody sent me to Actions Fishing Electronics at Anoka. And I was like, cool. So I called down there and Jack, the owner at the time, he had answered. And I went down there to go pick up the part. And when I was down there, he had a Talon. I'd asked him about Talons, and this was back when Talons had the motor on the top. They only had a 6 and an 8 foot. I mean, this is back in the day. And he's like, I just can't get this, I can't get this thing together. I can't get this thing working. You can have it. It's a trade-in. You can have it. And if you can figure it out, like I've got a circuit board coming for it or whatever. So I took it home, and that night I'd gotten everything together, and I'm there the next morning pounding on his door asking, where's my parts? Where can I go get my circuit board or whatever? And, he was pretty blown away that I could figure that out and that I was doing what I was doing with the trolling motors and stuff. And he pretty much offered me a job on the spot. So I had worked for him for a number of years, and this was obviously live scope and stuff like that. We had a couple of customers that had some of the early live scopes and stuff like that had come in. But that was pre-live scope. So, but we were doing some stuff that most people weren't doing. We were doing some custom rigging. And then Humminbird Onyx was kind of the top end Humminbird at the time. And we had I was working with a friend of mine who worked up at the Skeeter Boat Center at the time. And we were having troubles with these Onyxes. They weren't working right. And they were kind of slow. They were laggy. They would cut out. So what we couldn't figure out was he had one on a John boat that he had, and it worked great. He's like, I don't understand why mine works great and nobody else's works. And to make a long story short, we figured out that it was voltage. Nobody had ever really thought about dedicated wiring back in the day. Nobody really cared. You just basically the old school way was you take a voltmeter, you'd go up under the boat, you'd start probing around, you'd find 12 volts, boom, that's where I'm hooking the graph to. And it was fine because the locators weren't what they are now. So I think the first power harness that we ran was actually a Yamaha starter cable, like a 2-watt to the bow of a boat. And the customer came back swearing up and down that we must have updated his graph or gotten him a new graph or something because it worked so much better. So then I just kind of pulled in my bag of tricks and went back to my RC car days and factored in voltage drop and Ohm's law and stuff like that. And that's how we figured out, like, okay, within a 1.53% voltage drop is where we need to be for these electronics. And if we wire boats this way, everything works. You don't have any issues and stuff. And then that snowballed into, we have live scope, we have all these imaging and stuff like that. We have these high-end graphs with these quad-core processors. So I kind of rode that wave right in. I was doing that, well before C-Clear and any of that stuff was out. And that's kind of where I got my name. And then Jack had ultimately decided that he was going to retire. It didn't work out for me at the time to take over his business. So I ended up going to a different dealership. I worked at a dealership for about a year and a half. Just wasn't my thing. I mean, I kind of wanted to be a boat rigger. I wanted to work on trolling motors. I wanted to work my strengths. They more were looking for an engine tech that could also rig boats. So I ended up leaving there. And I'd taken some time off, and I left that dealership in September of 2020, actually. And I didn't know what I was really going to do. So I had some money saved up, and a friend of mine had a place in Florida. So by the time October would roll around, I was basically getting through steelhead season. I was like, well, I'm just going to go down to Florida. I'm going to fish for 2 months. I'm going to kind of live the bass bum life down there and figure out what I'm going to do. And while I was down there, talking to this friend of mine at the time, it was, we'd come up with, this is what I need to do. I need to start my own business. And my grandmother, when she was with us, that was her big push. She always told me, she's like, you need to start your own business. You need to do this for real. So that's what happened. I literally sat down in Florida in January of 2021 and started up a Facebook page. And I had 3 clients within a week. I posted it on a Facebook page, and these were old clients of mine that had come to me from past dealerships or whatever and gotten to know me. They got on my books right away. So I started the business in 2021 officially. I came back, and in March I was already rolling. I was doing it out of my grandma's shed in Hanover. I had room for realistically 1 boat, 3 boats outside. Kind of worked that through the summer. My grandma ended up passing away that August. And, the house obviously went up for sale that fall, so I kind of had to find a new place. Well, luckily, I ended up actually back in the old place that Actions was because I'd gotten to know the neighbors there. And they, when I reached out to one of them, was still a friend of mine at the time. I said, hey, what's going on with that new place or with the old place? Is anybody in there? Because I knew the rent was cheap and it was going to work out well. And that's kind of how we got to where we got. And I could have never imagined the amount of growth that we would have seen from there. I remember stressing about, well, am I going to be able to make rent payments and stuff there? And now it's, I'm stressing about not having enough space and wanting more space and stuff like that. So yeah, kind of a crazy story. I bankrolled everything myself. And the first client I had, he's still a good customer of mine. He had to prepay for his install so I could afford to buy the parts and stuff to do it. And that got us to where we are today. So honestly, I'm here today because I have some of the best customers that anybody could ever ask for. And they're the reason I'm here talking to you right now.
Well, I get a sense from just now working with you quite a bit. I'll get into more of like how I got to know you, but I get a real sense with you. You have a good business acumen. Like some people just have it. You know what I mean? You have a good way with customers. It seems that way with your crew as well. You got a talented crew that you're working with. And you're just talented with rigging boats, and I got wind of that first by just I have a Tracker Targa V18 walkthrough that I bought in the fall of 2020. I keep on saying the fall of 2000, the fall of 2020. And, it's like a COVID boat. It was built during COVID. You started your business during, like 2021. That was kind of a crazy time, just as far as the economy, a lot of questions. But But, I bought that thing just stock, with a power drive trolling motor at the bow, a very Elite 9 Lowrance, just a very basic 9-inch Lowrance unit at the console, with the intention that I would eventually just get this thing more dialed in. And I really wanted to get it dialed in quicker, but I had lost I think that I'm a freelance cameraman, and I had lost a client, and that it hurt. It's hurt for a while, financially, and that kind of like hampered the whole idea of getting that stuff put on quicker. But this year I was just like, my schedule was just kind of lining up where I'm like, you know what, this is the window to do this. I'm going to do this. So I'm going to get this thing rigged more to, what I was originally thinking. So what I did is I went on Facebook. I went on the Fishing Minnesota Facebook group, who's owned by Andy Peterson, who started it. He's a great guy, does a great job with that Facebook group. And he's got all these groups on there. And so this, well, what am I saying? There's all kinds of groups on Facebook, but this Fishing Minnesota group, I didn't get much sleep last night, so I apologize. This Fishing Minnesota group, it's so helpful. There's so many active members on there. And so I just went on there and I made a post. And I said, in this post, I said, hello, friends. It's looking like I may finally have a window of opportunity to upgrade the electronics and trolling motor on my Tracker Targa. I am inept when it comes to doing anything do-it-yourself or mechanical. Does anyone have any recommendations for places in the Twin Cities metro that rigs boats? I'm willing to drive a distance for a business that'll cater to my OCD, perfectionistic mental illness. Any help is greatly appreciated, but please make it fast. I'm worried my wife will see this post and catch wind of what I'm up to. Well, needless to say that she knows what I'm up to now. We still remain married, so that's good. But so I got all these comments from that one Facebook post on Fishing Minnesota, and you were routinely coming up on the comments. Taylor Spraungel, Spraungel Performance Marine. And it was kind of, it was a little bit of a competition between you and Fish Electronics, but you were ahead. And then what just sold it for me, honestly, was that, and this goes to you being just, you have a good business sense about you. You know that business is about relationships and just, just reaching out, and that's what you did. So you reached out in this comment here. And so I'm like, well, I'm working with Taylor then. So kudos to you doing this. You said, hey, buddy, I own Spraungel Performance Marine in Anoka. Me and my guys can absolutely help you out. Plus, we love working with you guys. Working with guys like you that are really, they really know what they want and can certainly make any install as custom as it needs to be to fit your needs. Give us a call on Monday and call me or Zach. We'll be able to take care of you, and we can walk through what our options are. Or you can stop in person anytime, see what we're currently working on, and chat with us about what you're looking for. So I just thought, you went above and beyond. That to me was just kind of, that sealed it for me to be working with you. So let me just show you, here's your website. That's you there on the right. And is that Cal to your right?
Yeah, that's Cal.
So he's your shop manager, is that correct?
Yeah, Cal's kind of the head guy there. Both of my guys, I trust them both with my life. Cal's been there since I basically came to Anoka. I hired him just to watch the shop, basically, and he got fully into it. So Cal is kind of my lead guy there. And then Zach is our third rigger. Certainly not unknowledgeable by any means whatsoever. They're both geniuses. Cal's been with me from the beginning, and then we do have another guy, Brian, that does trolling motors. But yeah, so that's my right-hand man on the screen there.
And so here is your shop right here. This is an aerial shot. I got a drone now, But you can, there's even more boats behind this shot here behind the drone that's not even showing up. So I can see where you're going to get to a point where you need more space because you're getting so much business. That's a heck of a problem to have. But yeah, that's kudos to you. Like just just being as busy as you are, and just also, I mean, like I said again, it's so important in business just to have a good, like people skills, and just the fact that you reached out to me, that meant everything. I'd already gotten all the comments, seen all the comments that you were the person to work with, and then you reached out and made a comment no one else did, that was in the running, let's say, and you did it. So that just it told me a lot about who you are, and that you gave a damn, quite honestly. So I was like, yeah, this is the guy to work with. So I appreciate.
I mean, that's how I've been. I mean, I've been in this industry my whole life. I've spent 100% of what I earn basically goes right back into the industry. I mean, I am an absolute fishing fiend. It doesn't matter what species it is. I love everything. And I know how I've been treated in the past, and I know how I feel, and I know what makes me want to go to somebody's business and spend money there. So I just feel like treating people like that, treat people how I want to be treated. And that's what I always get. I always hear the same feedback like you give me. It's just, you seem like you care. You reached out to me, you walked through this with me, you were personable, stuff like that. And it shows me that like everybody is kind of looking for the same thing that I always felt was missing from the fishing industry. When I was kind of coming up in the industry and stuff, and you're kind of a quote unquote nobody, you walk into these places and you feel like you're less than dirt to the people working there, and you're the one that's giving them your money. So why would I want to go somewhere and give my money to somebody who doesn't, even care that I'm there? So that just kind of had a few sour experiences with some other places that just told me that, I never want to be like that. And that goes back to my employees. I mean, how I have my employment structured with those guys and how I treat those guys. I mean, I worked in some places that, I was like, I never want my guys to feel like that. I never want my guys to have to worry about stuff like this. So, a lot of experiences have brought me to where, hey, I know what customers want. I know what my employees want, and you keep your guys happy, they're going to keep you happy. And, I've got a couple of rock stars working for me. I definitely couldn't do what I do now without them. I mean, I right away, as soon as we got to Anoka, was well over my head. So luckily, Cal stepped up to the plate and learned. Those guys do all the trainings we want. They're eager to do it. They love doing it. And, that's what got me here. And then having those guys have the same personality to, want to talk to the customer, different than everywhere else. We don't have a service writer. We don't have a counter person. When you call the shop, you get one of us four. And when you call and ask to talk to the person that took your boat in, that's the person that's working on your boat. So that's kind of how we do it is, if Zach's going to work on a boat, Zach is going to go out and do the walkthrough with the customer and ask the customer what he wants and everything like that. Zach is going to rig the boat. Zach is going to do the billing. And then when the customer comes to pick it up, Zach is going to walk through with the customer, do payment with the customer. That way, when the customer has a problem or a question, which happens more often than not, where it's just like, okay, where did you guys put this? Zach doesn't need to go track down another technician to come out there and show it. Zach rigged the boat. He knows where everything is. He can explain to the customer, and then that way the customer leaves there with 100% confidence in what they have and what they had gotten. So to me, that was just one thing that always bugged me, both as a consumer and a technician, was that like wall between the service writer and the rigger. I want to talk to the person that's actually working on my boat. I want to tell them directly, because they might have something else in their experience that works better or doesn't work, or they might have a suggestion for me. So that's just one of the main, notches that we have in our business, is just to be able to make sure that you're getting the best service you can. And that starts with the moment that you pick up the phone and call us.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. I love that system that you have. The thing that I was, thinking about too, like a person's boat, it's like, it's like a car that, and I would almost say like to a fisherman, your boat, if you're just a fisherman, but if you're even like I would say a serious fisherman, it's even more important. Like that's really your pride and joy, right? Like, and when I say a serious fisherman, that doesn't mean that you have to have some expensive boat, but when you finally have the ability to put a graph on that you've wanted, or a trolling motor on that you've wanted for a long time, you finally have the money, you have the money to spend to have it rigged. It's like, that's your baby, that stuff is going on, and you really want it to be done well. Like, I mean, and so I just think, I mean, this was how I was feeling. I was like, I mean, I'm an idiot when it comes to do-it-yourself stuff, like I said in that Facebook post, but that's not to say that I don't want things to be done right, especially with something that, I've spent a lot of money on that boat out there, and it means something to me. It's like it's like I have this old truck of mine, 95 Chevy Silverado you've seen, that thing means something to me. It's like, I don't know. I just, I take care of my stuff. I want, for my boat, that might be the last boat I ever own. I just want, I just want things to be done, and I want done to be right, things done right. And the people, and, I like it when I know that the people that are working on my stuff, and especially stuff that I really care about, like my boat, I like that the people that are working on it care. And they really, in the case of yourself and your crew, they know fishing too. You guys are like passionate fishermen. So I think that's a huge part of what you guys are doing at your shop there, is that you guys are all passionate anglers. So like, I mean, that's a benefit in a lot of areas, but just the fact of, especially like, all the trending things that are happening in the fishing industry, and the cutting edge stuff that's happening, but just the fact that how important fishing is, and that the people coming into your shop, how important fishing is to them, and that this is, to have that graph on that they've spent a lot of money on, they've really looked forward to having that thing, having that, and you guys putting that thing on right, wiring it correctly with the most power, and then coming up with ideas that maybe that your customer hasn't even thought of, that are just fantastic. And we're going to go into that with my boat, what you did. But I just think, I don't know, the fact that you guys are passionate, and you care, the fact that you're fishermen, I think just speaks volumes to what you guys are doing there.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to it. That's one of the things that, to be a part of our team at SPM, you have to. My guys, any one of my guys would basically push their whole life aside for fishing, and I am that person. The other thing is too is. Me and Calvin actually just got both of our first ever new boats within the last month. We've never owned new boats before. I've never owned a new boat. I've always had, 10, 15-year-old boats, just because that's what I could afford, and that's what always made sense to me. So, it always sucked to me having, I was the kid with the 2000 Skeeter bass boat, right? And I wanted to put a 12-inch graph on my console. Well, I couldn't do that because all those fancy BBT mounts and precision sonar mounts are all made for, the new stuff, the 2010s, the 2015s, whatever. So as a kid, young adult, I started fabricating these mounts for myself. I started adapting these older boats for newer stuff, and that brings a whole lot of appreciation. I have some customers that have came in and have spent an egregious amount of money, and they've been like, yeah, I went somewhere else, and they kind of looked at my boat and scoffed, and I could tell that they just didn't want to do it because they thought I wasn't going to spend money because I have an old boat. And that's where we stand is we don't care if you're spending $10 with us or if you're spending $100,000 with us. We treat everybody the same. I believe in being a good person, And in the round side business sense of that is, if I treat the guy good that's spending $10, he's going to go tell all of his buddies, right? Even if it's over a $10 thing, it's still going to be a crotch in their mind that they're going to be like, well, he treated my buddy right. Versus if I screw some guy over $10 and he's telling all of his buddies that this guy's a crook, that does more damage than good. And so I just believe in, doing good things for people and helping everybody out, regardless of budget, what they want, how they want it and stuff like that. And just being a good person has jumped my business up to where it is. And, even like a setup like yours that we're about to go over, taking in consideration that, hey, this is what I want to do right now. This is what I've allotted myself to do right now, but I want room to grow. I want to be able to adapt this system and stuff like that. And we do a lot of that because this stuff is extremely expensive and not everybody can afford to just go all out at once. So, and I understand that because I have been that person. I still am that person. I can't afford half the installs that I put on these guys' boats. So I understand when the customer comes in and says, I want room to grow, but I can't do it all right now. So we can plan that, right? And then, then the customer comes in a year later like, hey, I got a good tax return. Let's throw another graph on. Let's do this. Let's do that. And it's exciting for us because, I've had customers that have came in with 2 7-inch graphs on a very, very old boat that have grown with me to now at this point have brand new boats loaded to the gills, and they come in and they laugh about like, oh, I remember that old boat I had and stuff. He said, I never thought that I would be here. And it's just, I always took care of them, and that comes back to me. They always say like, you always took care of me. I was the pain in the butt customer that, had the $200 graphs that weren't working right, but you never complained. You always took care of me. And that's, that's why I'm here. So it just, what goes around comes around. Treat people again how I always wanted to be treated, and, just be nice to everybody and help everybody out.
So going back to like the fact that you guys are anglers, passionate anglers. So just talk about a little bit about like what species you like to go after. I mean, you even, I believe, have a tattoo of a steelhead on your arm. There it is. Yep. Yeah. So what do you?
Steelhead float reel over here. So yeah, I've got. Yeah, I'm diverse.
Yeah, so you love steelhead fishing. Just go through your favorite forms of fishing and what your crew likes to do.
So, my crew pretty much does everything. Zach is he fishes Champs Tour. He's really heavy into tournament bass fishing, as I was at that age too. But again, he likes doing everything else. Calvin is more leisure like me and likes to kind of spread around a little bit. So my summer months. I actually, that's why we just bought the boats. I fish rivers mostly for smallmouth, and a little bit of muskie. And then I do a lot of catfishing and a lot of carp fishing, which a lot of my buddies give me, joke around with me about it and say like, oh, that's stupid. Why would you do that? Until they come with, but we do it European style. We're fishing with, with rod pods and stuff like that, and beeper systems and, prepared hook baits and, 12-foot carp rods. I even have a carp reel here, big surf casting style reels. So we do that in the summer a lot. A little bit of muskie, a little bit of walleye. And then in the fall, I focus my kind of switch my focuses to trout, inland streamland trout, and then migratory steelhead. We do some brown trout fishing in the winter and stuff too, but that's kind of my dead season. So after about October, SPM kind of goes dormant. Not a lot of people are knocking on my door. So from October to kind of February, I've got a lot of time on my hands. I go out and I try to do a trip out to Erie, Pennsylvania for a month every year. I have a really good friend of mine that owns a tackle shop out in Buffalo. So we go out there and we float fish for steelhead. And then I also do some guiding up on the North Shore for steelhead and on the Brule. Most of it is like Band of Brothers. I do a lot of donated veteran trips and stuff like that. And then I do some paid trips too. And that it can be spin fishing, float fishing, center pin, fly, whatever anybody wants to do, we can do that. So we all kind of do the same thing. We also build custom fishing rods. My girlfriend, Abby, kind of owns that business and runs that, but we all put a lot of design into it too. So that kind of became a necessity because of how much other stuff I'm doing, I'm just looking around my garage right now, and I've got, float rods and fly rods over there. I have catfish rods leaned up here. I've got saltwater rods, carp rods, ice rods, everything, so I'm as diverse as it gets. I love every kind of fishing. I think the way that everybody does fishing is interesting and cool to me, for all the way from the guy with the tin rowboat with no electronics that somehow catches the biggest sunfish in the lake, all the way to the most technologically advanced bass angler that still can only catch, small fish or whatever. I love how everybody fishes. To me, fishing will never get old. There will never be an end to what I can learn, who I can learn from, and what I can ultimately catch. So that's why, for me, being a well-rounded multi-species angler, that's what I do in my free time. And it ties back to the business, so I can help people that maybe are also multi-species anglers. We're not just bass fishermen. We're not just walleye fishermen. We're not just rough fishermen, so I can work with a guy can come in, and I can give a lot of good knowledge on a boat that he can use to troll Great Lakes, and set him up with, saltwater style transducers, radar, all that stuff. And I can have a guy bring a saltwater boat up from Florida, and I can help him with that. We can do in-haul high speeds. We can do tub mount transducers. We can do radars on that. We can do AIS systems, all the way down to, the guy just brings in his tin boat and he wants 2 7-inch graphs and a link trolling motor. I can connect with every one of those customers on an angling level and make sure that we build them the perfect system.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing to me. I'm not an expert in this field, obviously, but that seems kind of unique. Like, you got a special thing going on there. Honestly, like, I think the fact that you're such a passionate multi-species angler, like, your stuff. It ain't like, you know what I mean? Like, you're like this. You almost seem like you're like a product of, like, in Fisherman, Minnesota. Like, we were talking about this the other day.
Yeah.
Like, in Fisherman magazine, which I grew up on. I think you were saying you did as well. It's just, it's like. I don't know.
Take the whole hunting and fishing library and crush it down into one person, and that's basically what I am.
Yeah, and then you couple that with your ability to know everything that's going on in the whole rigging world and how to do that stuff with, like, the right power and all the different mounts, all the technology, like the cutting edge technology that's happening. You just have this that's a great combination, dude. I think, and then you're just dabbling in other, like rod making and whatnot. It's like you're building an empire, it sounds like.
Yeah. So, basically I tried to find areas in the industry where I could kind of jump in and I could join in and give something that's worth giving, give something to the people that maybe they don't have access to. And that's where rod building was kind of an easy one for me. Abby does, most of the decorative stuff. That's what she's really good at is, the finite details, the assembly and stuff like that, dealing with, our manufacturers and stuff. But the design is obviously mostly me. And I can bring, actions and theories and stuff like that from different aspects of fishing in. So, like, I can take, some stuff that I learned about steelhead rods and bring those into, open water rods and vice versa, and all the way down the line. So that allows me to kind of think outside the box. So, like, we have a different guide system that we use on most of our rods than most. It basically allows the guides to choke down a little bit less violently. So when you make a cast on a spinning rod and you have your line coiling, it manages that coil a little less aggressively than a standard guide train, and it allows you to cast farther, less wind knots, all the way down the line. So, and it's also opened my eyes to kind of stuff that I didn't really plan on doing. Perfect example of that, we have a chatterbait rod that we had designed, a bladed jig rod. And when I was doing my stint down in Florida and bass bumming it, I'd fished the big bass tour down there, and we'd put together a chatterbait deal. We were basically, these fish were coming out from the main lake into the spawning bay, and we were intercepting them with bladed jigs. And at the time, I had an old Loomis that has been long discontinued that was like just broke in, and it was like as I could tell people, when you get a rod that just works, it's like putting on an old pair of underwear. I mean, it feels like you're right at home with it. Everything is good. So I wanted that rod back. I wanted something similar. There were some tweaks I wanted to make to it, but I wanted something similar. So we were able to design something that ended up being a lot different than what I had originally had, but I had ended up liking a lot more. Well, then what had happened was I'd built that rod. I had a friend of mine come in who's a walleye guide out in South Dakota, and he was really asking us about it. He's like, I know you know high-end equipment very well. So obviously, if you're building stuff, it's going to be good stuff. What do you got? And I showed him that rod built as a bait caster, as a bladed jig rod for bass, and he's like, I want these in a spinning rod. And I was like, well, for what? He's like, I think that's the best jig wrap rod that I've ever felt. So we did. So we built him those rods, and he's like, yeah. He's like, they're awesome for jig wraps. I absolutely love them for throwing like the stick baits. Like he throws a lot of the Rapala Mavericks and stuff like that. And he's like, it's crazy. And I had never intended on that blank being that. Since then, since having those, I've realized that rod has filled voids that I never knew that I needed to have filled as a bass rod and as, a walleye rod as well. It's not just a soft bladed jig rod. It's just, to me, a fishing rod. I'm all about a progressive action. And basically what that is, fishing rods can have a fast action where they bend really quickly at the tip. And then, they can have a slow action where they bend all the way through the blank. But a progressive rod is, it sounds a little bit backwards until you kind of feel progressive versus not, but it starts off with a very soft tip, a nice, meaty midsection, and a really stout backbone. And that gives you a rod that's very easy to fish. It's very easy to land fish on. So that's kind of where we pushed our rod design. And since then, the feedback we've been getting on the stuff we've been doing has been awesome. Guys are like, I was a little worried at first. It felt kind of slow, but when I hooked the fish and I got a big fish by the boat and I'm trying to deal with it, I knew it wasn't going to come unpinned. And there's been this weird, it's kind of starting to slide back the other way, but there was this weird thing in bass fishing for a while where guys were using these like 6/8 medium action spinning rods that were like medium heavies with 12-pound tests, and that was their finesse rig. And to me, that's not finesse. I'm a trout angler at heart. I fish with 2-pound tests regularly, and I've caught 5 to 8 pound trout on 2-pound tests. So to me, using 12-pound tests to catch a 3-pound largemouth is not finesse. So the problem is if you switch down to 6 and 8 pound on these these modern jig worm rods and stuff like that, you go to set the hook and it'll just blow it right up. The rod isn't soft enough to absorb. So when we make a jig worm rod, we give you the rod that you can pull the fish out of the foil with, but you can protect that light line if you're fishing clear water. So just kind of dabbling into multi-species, and that's a steelhead float rod theory that we've basically brought in, can help me do some really crazy stuff with fishing rods. And then at the end of the day, I was a Loomis snob, so I fish some of the best rods that you could get your hands on for most of my, fishing life up until this point. So, it's not like I'm just building rods just to build rods and put my name on it. I'm making sure that these are, as light and as sensitive as they possibly can be. So, it's been a lot of fun to do that. And I think everybody, when they get into fishing, they dream of being in the fishing industry. And, I got lucky and just kind of made it. It wasn't for lack of hard work or anything like that, but I'm very lucky to be in the spot that I am today and to be able to do what I do every day.
So what is the name of your rod company? I imagine it's Spraungel Performance Rods? Spraungel Performance Rods. What is it?
Cabbage Creek Customs.
Nice. I like it.
So, and then we call our bass rods and stuff C3, just to kind of slim it all down. But yeah, so everything. So we also have Calvin owns Supreme Lure Company, which is a soft bait company. We've kind of pumped the brakes on that just because we've been so busy, but that was a fun endeavor. But yeah, Cabbage Creek Customs is the rod company. We make everything from everything, and we honestly just haven't pushed that hard. We haven't done a huge social media push on it because we're having trouble keeping up with just what friends and my customers are wanting to buy. because it's been tough to find somebody to build quality rods alongside Abby and be able to, consistently produce rods. But we're getting there. And then once we do, we are going to make we're going to make a good push and get those out there. And, that'll just be a feather in my cap at SPM.
Awesome. Well, I won't ask you about how people can. It sounds like there's a very tight inner circle that can only get those rods. So I won't add to your workload and tell people like how to get your stuff.
Go look them up if you're interested, and if you think what I said sounds good. I mean, we're always looking for customers, especially guys that want to get in early and kind of ask questions and learn about the process. I mean, Cabbage Creek Customs on Facebook, you can look it up and you can see some of Abby's absolutely crazy artwork that she's done on some of the float rods, and if you want to order something, you want to stop in the shop and look at a couple of them, we got them there. But yeah, I certainly cater to anybody that wants one. I'm just not ready for the internet sales yet.
Got it. So obviously you've established that you are a hardcore multi-species angler, which I couldn't love more. I think that's so awesome. I'm super passionate about fishing. It's been my primary passion. I would say like nature. Nature was my first passion. And nature's all encompassing, right? So like it's just outside, outdoors. I mean, just everything outside. The animals, and I just love it. I love being outside. I love being just, exposed to nature. And so that's how I got into fishing. I just catching first all kinds of critters, western painted turtles, garter snakes, and yada yada. Tiger salamander was like the ultimate to catch a tiger salamander for me when I was a kid. But like that turned into fishing one summer, and it just blew up from there. So it's been my passion in my life. And I'm very thankful for that. I really am. I don't take that for granted. And it's been what's kind of powered me through my life. It's something I just absolutely love. And so to meet someone like yourself that's the same way, and then you have a business where you're just you're focusing that passion on your business is super cool to see. So in the rods and the rigging department, everything that you're doing is awesome. So with that being said, so I started, as a multi-species guy. I then got kind of more into bass fishing as a young kid. I fell in love with the Bassmaster television show, and I'm like, this competitive thing, I gotta get into this. And so I did. I was doing the bass clubs, and then, fished some bigger tournaments. But then I've gotten back into doing more just, multi-species stuff. So, when I came to you with what I wanted to do with this Tracker Targa, I told you this many times. I'm like, this thing needs to be I kept on saying like a Swiss Army knife of boats. We have so many different opportunities here in Minnesota for all kinds of fish. I mean, this lake sturgeon fishery near us at the St. Croix River is just amazing. Walleye fishing, pool 4, pool 2. It's just, there's great walleye fishing around us, great bass fishing around us, just everything basically. And I really enjoy all of it. So I needed a boat where I felt like I could just kind of, I could do anything out of it. And I expressed that to you, and you just kind of had all kinds of great ideas. And I guess let me show you, show the audience my boat, number one. So here it is. It's a Tracker Targa V18 walkthrough. If you're just listening to the podcast, it's a deep V boat. It's an 18-foot deep V boat, walkthrough boat with a walkthrough windshield, with a 200 Mercury Pro XS motor on the back. And so I needed this thing to just be to give me, to be able to fish out of it as best as I could for all, the species that I fish for in Minnesota. And so Taylor's like, okay, this is, you know, I told him basically what I was looking for. I was like, okay, I want to get a real graph at the front. I want to get a real graph at the console. I got to get a real troll. I say real. Okay. I mean, what do we want to call it? Like, I mean, let's say legit. Okay. No, that's not even, listen, anything you can afford, go for it. I hate to say all this stuff because
high end, that's what you wanted.
High end. Yeah. It's high. I've gotten to this point where I felt like I can go more high end. So basically a high end trolling motor, high end graph at the bow, high end graph at the console. And then, what else was I? Oh, and then I was like, okay, I was debating on this for the longest time. Am I going to do the forward facing sonar thing? You know, should I pull the trigger on that right now? I don't have anything against forward facing sonar. I know that's a very controversial topic, but that wasn't where my head was at. I was just like, it's an amazing technology. It can tell you a lot about fish, which I think is super interesting. So eventually I just thought about it for a while. I'm like, you know what? Let's get the forward-facing sonar on there. Let's do it. And then so I really talked with you a while about what was the best way to do that, right? So yep. you can, well, we'll get to that. Let's start at the bow, okay? The bow of the boat. And so we already did, Taylor and I already shot a video on all this. In fact, it's already up on the YouTube channel by this time. And all the other, by the time that we're doing this podcast and all the other, Facebook and Rumble even. So Angling Uploaded, go there. You'll see it. Taylor did this fantastic walkthrough with everything that he did to my boat. And so these images are coming, they're the stills from that video that we shot together. So let's just start at the trolling mode. Now, let's go at the bow here first. So we'll work from the bow to the back of the boat. So the trolling motor is a Minn Kota Ultrex Quest. I went all out with this trolling motor. It's got a 60-inch shaft. You need that for a deep V boat. Just Taylor, go through that trolling motor. You're going to know that trolling motor better than anybody. You really love this thing.
Yeah. So. Talking about me for a sec, back in the day, before Ultrex existed, what we used to have to do is we would put removable brackets on the bows of our bass boats. And if we were fishing a tournament where it was a shallow water deal, we would use a Fortrex. When we were fishing a tournament that was an offshore deal, we would switch over and we would put a Tarova on the boat, so we would get spot lock. Then Minn Kota comes down the pipeline with Ultrex, and it changed my life. It changed a lot of people's lives. I mean, as the second I saw a promo video, I was down my rep's throat saying, I need one of those. I needed one of those 3 years ago. I need one now. I've been running Ultrex since they came out. I've been with them for the good, the bad, the better, the worst, everything. I know every part of that motor. I've worked on countless of them. I've installed so many of them, right? It's the best trolling motor. I've tried everybody else's. Then Minn Kota comes out with Quest. And we all knew Quest was coming. Everybody in the industry knew Quest was coming. It just had to come down the pipeline. I shot a video with my rep with the Quest, was impressed with it. But again, it wasn't that crazy. It wasn't until I got one myself and I realized how much that trolling motor changed the way that I fish as a river angler. Having a 24-volt motor, being able to pull me upstream, having the mount act the way it does, having it auto-orientate when you stow it, having it auto-jump forward when you deploy it. The spot lock is just incredible on it. So what we're seeing now is more and more anglers are moving to the front of the boat. And this is talking more towards walleye and panfish anglers. We used to have those guys were kind of sitting at the helm. They would troll, they'd use their kicker, maybe they'd have an Altera. Well, now with forward-facing sonar, a lot of guys are moving to the front of the boat and everybody's starting to fish like a bass guy. So I have actually been taking a lot of Alteras and Tarovas off of walleye boats and putting these Ultrex Quests on them. And everybody has loved them. I mean, everybody, I've done some absolutely insane installs on people's boats where we have placed, every wire perfectly. We put our heart and soul into it, and they come back and the first thing they say is, that trolling motor's crazy. So it is an absolute game-changing trolling motor. I get a lot of people that call me and say, is it worth upgrading, from my previous Ultrex? It's not even in the same ballpark. And I love Minn Kota. It's one of the best companies around. The way they treat me as a service center, the way they've treated customers of mine that have been out of warranty, that have needed a little bit of leeway, the way they build their product, the design of their product, everything. I can't say enough good things about Minn Kota. Minn Kota doesn't pay me to say any of this. I sell their product right alongside Garmin, Lowrance, PowerPole, everybody. But at the end of the day, when I get off work and I'm completely zonked and I need to escape and I need to get away, my boat's got an Ultrex on it. So when you asked about this and you were already kind of leaning towards the Humminbird network for the One Boat Network, right away that was the motor we got. And it's an awesome motor that you can put a forward-facing sonar transducer on it. That's why a lot of guys are doing it, is when you put the forward-facing sonar deucers on it, you can stow and deploy the motor properly, and you can fish off the bow with it, and it's much more responsive. So that is, in my opinion, the best trolling motor anybody can buy right there.
Yeah, so you kind of go into it here a little bit, or went into it, as far as the One Boat Network. It's important to say, too, that I wanted, on this boat, I like I said, I'm OCD. I got all kind. I'm like on a scale from 1 to 10. I'm like a 7.5 with my OCD. Legitimately, I check my fly like multiple times. I know my fly's up, but I have this whole thing like, oh my God, what if I'm in public and my fly's out and it's anxiety. I'm a nut. And so I love the idea of the One Boat Network, right? So the One Boat Network is Minn Kota and then Humminbird work. So it's Johnson Outdoors is the umbrella company over them, which I love. I love everything that's going on with Johnson Outdoors for the most part. And so I love that they're all talking to one another, right? I love that connectivity. And I wanted that to be the case on my boat. Like everything's talking to each other. So the trolling motor, I can do stuff. I can control the trolling motor on the graph on these Humminbird Explorer 12 units that we'll go over here in a second. But and there's a lot more than just that, and I'm sure Taylor can elaborate. But I just wanted everything to be seamless and talking to each other. And that was an issue too. Like I know that the Mega Live, the original Mega Live, Humminbird Mega Live, wasn't really up to snuff, and so I saw the Humminbird Mega Live 2 this year. There's a lot of people that I trust that were saying, yeah, they've got it, much more dialed in. This thing's legit now. So I'm like, all right, I am going to get forward-facing sonar. I just want this all to be talking to each other. I want it all integrated, all the happy companies working together under that Johnson Outdoors umbrella. I just, I wanted that, and I was like confident that the Mega Live 2 had gotten to a point. Maybe it's not as good as Garmin, okay, but it was good enough. I'm not going to be, fishing, competitively fishing, and using forward-facing sonar. So it wasn't that, I didn't need it to be crazy clarity. It was, to me, it just needed to be better than the original version, better enough, and from what I saw, it was. So anyway, I went on a rant there. I can't even remember what we were talking about originally, but it was just, I wanted that whole One Boat Network. That's what it was. It was the One Boat Network. I like the idea of everything talking to each other. Yeah. So
it's a really nice network the way it does. So I run Lowrance's on my personal boat, but I have Talons on it and an Ultrex Quest. And I can stow and deploy my Talons from my Ultrex foot pedal. Everything Johnson Outdoors plays together. That One Boat Network is really nice to be able to, you're sharing everything, right? So no matter where you are, whatever that screen sees, this screen can see. You can control the trolling motor from here, there, everywhere. You want Mega Live over here, well, then you got it over here. If you don't want it over there, you can put it over there. You can do whatever you want, and it works together seamlessly. And I think that's something that a lot of people miss the boat on, and that's something that kind of separates my business from a lot of other places. Is these big box stores, you don't get that information. I get a lot of people that get sold stuff that doesn't work, and unfortunately they ends up just being more frustration. And that's why when you came in with, that's why I said I like working with OCD people, because you told me right off the bat, this is what it needs to do. Okay, done. Here's the pieces that make it do this. Is this what you want? Yes. And then, of course, as I'm sure we'll get into, we added a little bit of extra something on there to make it do stuff even better than you thought it could do. But that's the biggest thing, is just understanding all of this stuff and being able to basically take what a customer thinks they want and put that into technical terms to then get it on the boat.
So yes, this is the Minn Kota Ultrex Quest here. I'm just like floored by it. I've been using it now for, I've gone out a few times now using it, and I'm like, oh my goodness, it's amazing. The integrated sonar, I got the 2D sonar chirp package on there. I don't need side imaging at the bow there, so I just went. Yeah, I love how everything's just integrated. I mean, I came from a very basic trolling motor, so now it's like, oh my God, I got sonar built into the thing. It's a brushless setup, and that head there, the trolling motor, which is just crazy. It's crazy. What blows me away by it, dude, is like how just quiet it is.
Yep.
Like it's so it's quiet. There's so much power, that you would think that there would be more noise coming from it, that you have so much thrust in that trolling motor, and it's just like you don't hear anything. That's what blows me away by it, dude. Like, there's a number of things that blow me away by it, but that's a big one.
Yeah, that's brushless. I mean, it's just magnets in there. There's two bearings on each end of the rotor of that trolling motor, and there's basically fields that reverse. The rotor has a permanent magnet in it, and it basically magnetizes and demagnetizes, and that's what spins your prop, as opposed to a brushed motor having basically a piece of copper wrapped around it and brushes that apply electricity to that, and every time that motor moves a little bit, you get a spark. This doesn't do that. This technology's been out for a lot longer than it's been in trolling motors, and it is, we call it 50-50 technology, because the spec sheets might not show it, but I sure as hell feel like it's 50% more powerful, 50% more efficient. And usually that doesn't exist. I mean, nowhere else in this world do you get more power, more performance, more reliability, to be completely honest with you, and better efficiency. I mean, it sounds made up, but it's true.
Yeah, it's an awesome motor. I'm loving it. Let's go again. We're still at the bow. Let's go to the graph that I decided to go with here. This is obviously the silicone covers on there, but that is an Explorer 12. So it's a 12-inch Humminbird Explorer 12, which is the new graphs out this year, which I'm loving it so far. I'm really loving the interface, but what I like what you've done here, so you've just basically you put the mount, just a regular mount there. But what's great about working with Taylor is that, I told him, I said, I want to kind of future-proof this. I think that down the road, and this might be a long way down the road, I got to pay this thing off first, all the stuff I have on here. But I think I'd probably like to have two graphs at the bow, two 12-inch graphs at the bow eventually, and then probably another graph, 12-inch graph at the console. So the idea for that, and honestly, this is these are first world problems, right? I realize that this is a real luxury to have two graphs at the bow, two graphs at the console. But the nice thing about that is that you could just have the map on one of the graphs and know how you're specifically working at the big graph, or the big map, so you can see specifically, let's say, how you're working a point, and then the other one, is just dedicated to like side imaging or something. It's a nice luxury to be able to do that. But honestly, with these 12-inch graphs, the more I'm working with them, they just, it works pretty darn well, even just a single, unit. It's big enough where you can just still see things very, very well with it. So I've been happy with it. But yeah, so the fact that so the idea is we're kind of future proofing so that we can maybe down the road put another graph up there at the bow. So you were kind of demonstrating that right here, where that would go and what kind of amount that would be.
One thing that we do that, some people ask us about is, we don't sell sailboat fuel. We don't sell gimmicky mounts. We don't try to force a mount down everybody's throat that makes it feel like you're playing keyboard. And that's why, some people might look at that graph mounted on that bow plate like that and say like, oh, that might have been a cheap shot or a lazy move. But in my opinion, everything you add, no matter what it is, in any case, you just added another failure point. You just added another piece to deal with. You just added something else to go wrong. So whenever we can, like in your boat worked out phenomenally. We love bolting the gimbals direct, just like that one is, because there's no graph to come loose. There's no bolts to get lost in the graph. There's no nothing. It's right there. It's always going to be there. We set it up to where it needs to be, and it's locked in. With the bass boats, we sell Bass Boat Technologies. It's the same thing. Lock that graph down, bolt it down. It's not going to move. If somebody wants that, if somebody wants the raise up style mounts, that's perfectly fine, and we do those a lot. But when a customer comes in like you that says, listen, I want it to be simple, I want it to be sleek, and I want it to work, this is what we like to do. And that's ultimately what it did. And it's planned out so we can add a second graph below that. If those graphs were to come loose, you got a lot bigger issues to worry about than your graphs coming off. So that's why, something like that. And then the way we ran the wires, we try not to drill a bunch of extra holes in somebody's boat, because who knows, down the road, you might say, I don't want any graphs in the bow of my boat, right? So now we can just pull that gimbal up, fluff the carpet up, they're gone. So we like to really be careful about how we do things to make sure that, we're not putting anything extra on the boat that doesn't need to be on there, making sure it's simple and making sure it's rock solid as can be. So that way, I could tell you that when I go out and take my boat out on the day after work and want to go fishing, the last thing I want to do is mess with anything at all. So that's why we do things the way we do it.
No, I think it looks fantastic. I like that, you've future-proofed it. We've talked about putting a slide mount right below, I guess that's what you call it. Swing mount, Ram swing mount right below it. That'll just be like directly right below it. Work out fantastically. It would mount right to that. I guess it would. What is that? That's just like this targa, this plate there at the bow. Just
starboard bow plate. Yeah.
Yeah. So I like that idea very much. I'm like, it looks fantastic. I like it. I like how it's mounted. I think you guys did a great job. So this is next here is maybe some people will find maybe the most exciting. And this was the last thing I decided. I was like, am I going to do this? Okay, yeah, we're going to do this. So we decided to go with the forward-facing sonar. We're going to put Mega Live 2 on the boat, but we're going to put it on a pole. And so here you are standing next to it on your right there is a Brew City forward-facing sonar pole. On the bottom of it, it's got the transducer, the Mega Live 2, Humminbird Mega Live 2 transducer. And yeah, just kind of go into that, why you thought that to go with that Brew City pole, just the whole thing. And then also, too, you can kind of see it in that picture, on these trackers, they have, it's known as a VersaTrack system. So I think virtually like every like newer aluminum boat now has a track system from the bow to the gunnel, right? It's just a great way to mount things, and I kind of, with Tracker, with the VersaTrack system, I wanted to incorporate that that system in, to use it to help mount the forward-facing sonar pole. So I spoke with you about that, and you came up with just a great idea with a Cisco Fishing Systems mount, VersaTrack mount, that worked really, really well. And you could see it in the picture there. Just kind of go through how this whole system works.
So there's a lot of poles on the market. There seems to be like there's 10 new ones every week. I'm currently looking at my personal live sonar pole on the other side of the garage is a Bruce City. They're the best pole. Just the ability to pull a pin and rotate it up and have it sit parallel with your boat gun will take off, go to your spot, pop the pin out, slide it back down, and be fishing again is huge. You want to take it off, slide the pole out, unplug the transducer, it's out of the boat, it's in the garage, it's in the boathouse, it's in the truck, it's in the rod box, it's gone. 100% of what we do for rigging is ease. I can't tell you how many people I've had. I actually think of one customer in specific that came in, and the guy that rigged his boat rigged these fin gear poles on, which they're fine, but he rigged them in a way that he ran the wires so tight that no matter what this customer did, he always had to have his transducer poles on his boat. And when he wasn't using them and it was on a Ranger, they swung into the inside of the boat. So when he wasn't using his transducers, he couldn't get into his side storage compartments. And to me, that's just the most insane thing ever, because obviously this guy's got a huge electronic setup. He's not using his two rear forward-facing sonar transducers unless he's trolling salmon. And he goes on 2 salmon trips a year. So to me, it's like, man, you just screwed half of your boat for 2 trips a year. So that's why we do the Bruce City, and we do it with the Mega Live 2. It's very easy. It's just 2 quick release. Basically you just unthread and pull the plugs out. You can pull a pin out of that Bruce City, and that whole pole comes out of the boat. You can take it in your hands. You can walk away with it. You can put it like my jet boat's at the shop, and my Bruce City's sitting there in the corner. And when I'm ready to go fishing with that, I plug that transducer right into my unit of my boat, and I put the Bruce City on, and I'm gone. So the other reason why we did that, and I'm sure you're going to get to that picture is the ability to move the transducer around the boat. If you don't want it in the bow, move it to the back. Yeah. So what we did was we added that secondary option back there. Because of Humminbird having all of the computing done in the Mega Live transducer, all you need is a power and an Ethernet cable, which is in my hand right there. So you can, and like you spoke about, you're just going to get a second Cisco mount. All you have to do is pull the Bruce City out, walk to the back of the boat, slide it in the second mount, hook the cables up. Well, now you have live sonar in the back of the boat too. So that's, kind of goes back to your Swiss Army knife of a boat, being able to move that around. And then how we designed, the cabling and all this, when you're not using one or the other, they just slide right back up and they go away. You would never know that they were even there to begin with. And that to me just aids in, maybe you don't want any forward facing on the boat that day. Maybe you want it in the back, maybe you want it in the front, or maybe you want to do all 3 things on the same day while you're on the water. And just being able to do that for customers, to me, is like the most simple thing ever that we can do for somebody, that I think can greatly improve somebody's fishing experience, especially, getting into forward-facing sonar and trying to understand how they're going to utilize it.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love what you did there. The on the back there at the on the side of the boat, you just made like an access little, I don't know what you would call it. You call it like a black hole. It's just It's just a place where that cable can you can push that back in when you're done using it. When you're done using the pole in the back of the boat. It's a fantastic. I just love it because you could be up at the bow, fishing for walleyes or whatever, and using forward-facing sonar, for bass or walleyes up there. But then, you know, and all, I mean, you can then bring that pole back. You could still be, you could be trolling for walleyes. Did anybody troll for walleyes anymore? I don't even know if they do that anymore.
Lake Erie, that's still the thing to do on Lake Erie, I guess.
Yeah. So, but you can be like, like trolling in the back, have the forward-facing sonar back there, as you're sitting. Or you can just be bottom fishing and be back there with it, for catfish. So it's like, it just gives you a lot of it gives you just a lot of different options, and that's huge. So you came up with that idea, and I think it's just been absolutely fantastic, and that's what you get when you work with someone that is like just a passionate multi-species guy like you are.
That's one thing that comes, it's benefited so many walleye anglers, but that actually for me comes from catfishing. Some of the small rivers that I fish on, I've got in a stretch river, I've got 10 spots, 10 log jams that I fish, right? And I found that, usually this is, towards the end of the season, September, October, as it starts to cool down, and these channel cats really pack into these log jams super heavy, and the water gets a little bit lower and more tame. I'll pull up to these spots, these log jams, and get the boat in position, and I'll throw my rods back and immediately shine forward-facing sonar back onto it. And it's actually been like 100% of the time. You'll see if that's an active jam, and if there's a school of cats in there, you'll immediately see the swarm pull out of the timber, whether or not they go down and they eat your bait or however many you catch. But hey, the fish are in this jam today. This is where they are. This is going to be the hot one. You can immediately, as soon as you chunk that chunk back there and they start to smell it, you can see them pull out of there. That's why I started thinking about forward-facing sonar in the back of the boat, was for fishing bottom baits off the back of the boat. And then once you do that, my mind immediately I was like, oh my gosh, like the first time I did it, I was like, what about the walleye guys? What about trolling? What about this? What about muskie fishing? What about having a second guy bass fishing back here? So that goes into, maybe I wouldn't have stumbled upon that had I not been, fishing channel catfish on, small rivers and stuff like that. But, and ultimately it really aids in that, and I know forward-facing sonar gets a lot of flack, and I get it. I know where the hate's coming from, but the end of the day is, if you're worried about our fisheries declining, that is 100% angler responsibility. There's no argument that forward-facing sonar is doing this. If somebody's targeting muskies in too deep a water, that's somebody targeting muskies in too deep a water. If somebody's catching too many panfish and keeping too many panfish, that's somebody catching and keeping too many panfish. They're just, it's a tool. It's an amazing tool to use. It's an amazing tool to also beat your head up against a rock because you've been following, a carp around for 20 minutes thinking it's an 8-pound smallmouth. So, to me, it's just an awesome tool that I think if more people utilized it would really realize what it's for and how fun it is. And it really, I bring a lot of enjoyment hearing guys come back to the shop and say, like, what they have seen or what they have learned or what they have witnessed or spots that they thought they knew that it's completely different and stuff like that. So that's why, I love the versatility of forward-facing sonar. I guess in the back of the boat, it's not forward-facing sonar anymore. It's rear-facing sonar, so that doesn't even fall into the same category technically.
Yeah, I think we need to just call it live sonar, even though really all sonar is live. I mean, it's like, it's. I tell you, the problem with doing a video podcast, I'm going on a tangent right now. I got this flaring happening. Drive me crazy. The flaring, my side flare, my hair. There's one flare that's really getting. Anyway, no, like what were we just talking about? I have a real problem. We were talking
live
about live sonar. Yeah, so
it's gonna be the new name, honestly.
Yeah, it's just forward facing. It's just come on, it's a mouthful. Like, let's just call it live sonar. So, but yeah, no, I was going to ask you, I wanted to ask you, so when you're bottom fishing, you pull up on a log jam, what are those catfish? Are we talking flatheads, channel cats? What are they doing when you first shine on them?
So, most of my experiences with channels, I don't have enough, experience with flatheads that I want to, put anything in anybody's head. But with channels, um, I've actually, I've seen some crazy stuff, and I've actually learned, a lot of people, the YouTube will tell you that flatheads are the predators and channels are the bottom feeders. And in some fisheries, I'm sure, pay lakes down south where they put 20,000, channel catfish in a little pond. Of course, they're going to eat whatever's dead on the bottom because there's nothing else there for them to eat. But I actually found something interesting this year fishing for channels. I was fishing below a dam, and this dam had a really fast spillway. Um, what I was noticing was the catfish weren't schooled up, in these hovering schools like they normally were. And I was like, God, what, so I just went and fished in the spot that I normally do. And what I was watching happen, I've never seen this before, and I never thought in a million years that channels would do this, was I could shine my live sonar over to this fast current, and I could see the crinkling in the image from the fast air rated current. These channel cats were coming on the bottom. They would crawl along the bottom in 20 some feet of water, and they would come straight off the bottom and they would shoot into this fast current. They had to have been feeding, right? I don't know why else they'd be doing this. And they would hit that current, and that current was so fast that these channels would literally come across my screen like face down like this, or like off to the side or upside down until they got into the slack water, and then they'd like reorientate themselves and go right back down to the bottom. And I've never ever seen catfish feed like that before, and it reminded me of like a saltwater, like how saltwater fish feed in like a prop wash. Like they were coming from the bottom, they were ambushing into this fast current, and then they were just like riding the current, and then they would hit the slack water and reorientate themselves and go right back down. So that was a really crazy thing that I had never seen. But as far as like log jams are concerned, usually you can't see them in the log jam because there's just a good log jam has way too much going on. But you throw a couple bottom rigs out and you go knock on their door and tell them that the pizza's here, they're coming out of it. And a lot of times those channels don't spend their life belly on the bottom. I think a lot of people think that fish spend their lives belly on the bottom, but in that log jam is so much of a current break that they're up and they're suspended and they're swimming around through it. So they come out like a I don't even know, it's like a wall of fish come out, and then of course when they get the bait, they drop right back down to the bottom. But you'll see them. I mean, you'll shine over there, and you'll kind of be looking, and all of a sudden you'll see one, come out and go down to the bottom, and then there's another one and another one, and it's usually when that happens, it's about the time that you tell your buddy, like, hey, they're here. There's already a rod that's gone, and he's already hooked up, and it But then hey, this is worth spending some more time on. You hook that one fish, you're gonna spook the fish if the water's clear or whatever. But like, I just watched 3 fish come out of there in the 2 seconds I live sonared it. This is a good spot. And one thing that I do want to touch on that I don't think gets brought up a lot is fish understand what sonar is, especially a fish like a catfish that's very sensitive. All fish have lateral lines. They do feel that. So fishing with live sonar over time is going to make fish sonar smart. They are going to hear that sonar and they are going to be repelled by it. So when I fish for cats, I do not keep that beam on there just drilling away at them. I use my live scope and my live sonar just as a tool to locate and then fish. So I'm like, okay, here's the fish. They're over there, 60 feet, live scope, go over there, cast out, done. If we don't get bit, shine back over there. They're still there. They're not biting. Something else is going on. And I think a lot of people that don't have it or are maybe new to it think it's this thing where you're going to, I almost call it walking the dog because you're like holding it like a leash and you're just kind of walking it around trying to follow your bait. There's a delay in it. It just doesn't work like that unless you have like a suspended bass or like a smallmouth that's sitting on a rock. You're never going to really be able to do that. So for me, what live sonar is point, there's my fish or there's my weeds or my rock or whatever, cast, my bait's falling. Now I'm just going to go fishing. So, I think that's one of the interesting things about live sonar a lot of people don't realize is just to, use it to locate and then fish and forget about it.
No, that's a really good point. Very good point. It's sonar is sound. It's how I imagine it's how like dolphins, marine mammals. It's how it's echolocation bats. I think it's a very similar. It's very similar to how animals are using sound, to see, and they're probably imaging in their brain something very similar to what we're seeing on these graphs. Probably much better actually, but. I could talk with you for hours on this because you mentioned we could go into the whole suspending fish thing for forever because for the longest time, I think anglers just think, oh yeah, they're relating, everything's just relating to the bottom, Fish are going to do whatever the F they want, man.
Yep.
And they're suspending way more than people realize. Like forward-facing sonar is it's just shown like just how fish, like all kinds of fish, like, you're talking about channel cats, like it doesn't matter. They will suspend. It's kind of foolish to have ever thought that, fish just have to be relating to something near the bottom all the time. And forward-facing sonars just really open up people's minds to just how often they're in they're in no man's land. So it's just an amazing tool just to learn about the environment that fish are living in. So I love it for that aspect. But
fish have tails in a swim bladder and they're not afraid to use it. I think some people forget that.
That's a great point. They have swim bladders, y'all. They have in the scuba diving world that's called a buoyancy compensator, right? A BCD. I took one. I got certified and I took an open water. I got my certification. I took the open water diving thing, and then I haven't been scuba diving since, but I do remember that. That's how you go up and down, a buoyancy compensating device. You go up and down the water column. Fish have that built into them. So anyway, let's get back to the boat, the graph at the console here. So this is an Explore 12 unit, and it's I love the thing. I've been dabbling with this thing now. I guess I've had my boat out twice now, 2 or 3 times now. Tomorrow I'm taking her out and I'm really gonna actually go hardcore fishing with it. But this Explore 12 unit, I'm super impressed with how user friendly it is. I love the menus. But I also, dude, I absolutely love this Ram swing mount for a number of reasons. It is rock solid. Once you tighten that thing down, it is super rock solid. But then just to be able to swing that around to disconnect the cables makes it super easy. I see some of these guys, it's such a pain to get their cables connected into their graphs. And that swing mount makes it super, super easy, dude. I love that whole thing that you've done there.
Yeah, we usually aren't a fan of Ram products just because anybody that's ever had a graph on a Ram mount knows that it just falls over time. But these swing mounts are not like a normal Ram. It's basically 2 bolts that sit like this, and you can loosen them up and you can pivot them like this. And when you tighten them down, they can't go down. It's all cast aluminum. It's locked in, rock solid, and they're relatively inexpensive. They're awesome mounts, and they're super easy to use. And like you said, being able to swing it around, or just I just want a little bit of adjustment, or I just want to show the person sitting next to me what's on the screen. Just back it down a little bit, spin it around, show it to them. And that's that.
It's really. I'll be honest with you. I was a little bit kind of apprehensive about it because I just saw them on. I've seen so many Ram mounts, and the ball mounts and everything, and I didn't, like you said, I didn't. That's one of the things. I think they're made well and everything, but I didn't like that it was just that graph could move around, and this thing is it's just absolutely rock solid on there. So and once you tighten it down, it's rock solid. But then it just gives you this ability to move the thing wherever you kind of want it to connect cables, or like you said, to show your buddies. So I'm a big fan of that, dude. But also go into that Explore 12 unit a little bit and the kind of the new things about what's being offered there by Humminbird.
Yeah, so essentially what Humminbird did is they dumped Helix, they dumped Solix. They still have Apex for now, and they came out with Explore, and they've got it in a 9, a 10, and a 12. And anybody that that has owned a Humminbird product knew that you would get 9, and then they would sell it as Chirp, MDI, MSI, 10, Chirp, MDI, MSI, and they were 3 separate units. Well, they stopped doing that. They did it, kind of followed suit to everyone else. So basically what this unit is it's a full capable unit. You get it with a side imaging transducer, down imaging, 3-in-1 deucer, or you get it with no transducer, and they've revamped the whole thing. It's just like a Lowrance. It's just like a Garmin. Everything is the same now. We are in the world where it is honestly Ford, Dodge, Chevy. Everybody's got good forward-facing sonar. Everybody's side imaging rocks. This unit in particular has been the most impressive to me just for the price point. The user interface is crazy easy. I mean, the pictures are super obvious. It's fast. You zoom in, zoom out. I mean, it's like using a cell phone. Honestly, that's the only thing I can really describe it as.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's just like using a phone. It's not like using some archaic, clunky graph. It's like using a phone.
Yeah,
they've been great. We've sold a whole bunch of them. Everybody has the same feedback you do, where they love them, and they're not $5,000 like some other 12s are that do the same stuff that this thing does.
Yeah, no, I'm super impressed with it. I just my limited amount of time that I've used it so far. I'm super impressed with it. That's been the kind of thing that's a little bit intimidating when you step up to a graph, a bigger graph like this. I was like, oh my God, how long is it going to take to learn this thing? And it's really just user friendly and intuitive, and I'm just like, oh yeah, I can go right to Mega Live 2, go right to side imaging, and everything's built in right there on that screen to mess with the sensitivity or the range. It's all right there. You don't have to go into another menu setting. It's all right there. Boom. And just a super smart design. I'm really impressed by it. But as far as this is. You had convinced me to go this route too. So what transducers are we going to be using for that Explore unit, right? So
yeah, this is a very hot topic, and this is something that, people almost argue with me on the phone sometimes about. So basically, on a boat, you've got 3 options for transducers. You've got good, better, best. You wanted best, so we did that. To get the proper 2D sonar at speeds, you do need to have a secondary transducer. You can certainly get it with a 3-in-1. So you can see when we're just talking about the driver's side of the boat, there's that small transducer on the end of the board right by your live well. Looks like an exhaust or an overflow. All that transducer does is 2D. Or, Chirp 2D, which is what Humminbird calls theirs. That's mounted low in the water to pick up, sonar when you're traveling at speeds. Now, do not think of that as a safety measure, because if that says it's 2 feet of water, it's already too late. You're doing 35 miles an hour, you're in 2 feet of water. A foot of water probably happened quicker than you could have realized. What that's useful for, though, is finding structure off, finding humps that don't exist, or finding hard spots and stuff like that. So that's a super important piece of equipment. Now, some people might say, if they're an eagle eye and they're just looking at the other side of it, well, Taylor, you mounted the transducer in the wrong spot because you're going to block out the side imaging beam with the 2D transducer. On your boat, you have a flat transom, which means when the motor is fully tucked underway, it is pretty much sitting flush with the transom. So the problem with that is it will block your side imaging. Simple fix for that is to just sit there and wait for the motor to trim up, and then you have your side imaging back. It's annoying. It honestly in some instances you don't have the ability to do it. It takes too much time. So we actually did 2 side imaging transducers. One is reading the left side and one is reading the right side, and they come together in a Y cable and they go into the unit. So it's basically stitching you a seamless side imaging picture by using 2 transducers. So you do not need to trim your motor up. You don't need to worry about any of that. It's just reading out the side of the boat. And then we can actually use that as our benefit. We can take that 2D transducer and we can place that lower in the boat because we don't have to avoid the side imaging inducer, and that's going to give you a better reading at speed.
Yeah, this might, well, there's a lot of things that I love about this, but this is, one of my favorite things that you did to this boat. I hadn't even thought about the 2D sonar aspect of it, that high-speed sonar, transducer. I'm glad that you did that. I love the whole not having to trim up the motor. It just looks slick for my OCD. It's symmetrical, I like that. So just, this is just the boat that I've always wanted. And at least as an adult, in my middle age, let's put it that way. I've had bass boats and stuff. Bass boats used to be my favorite boat. But this boat right now, thanks to what you and your guys have done, it's everything I could have asked for, dude. I absolutely love it. I'm super excited just to go out and fish out of it because I know that it's capable of doing so much. So yeah, so thanks, dude, for doing all that you've done, and I would say reasonably priced. I would say very reasonably priced. I think you guys. This isn't. I guess this is like my first time getting a boat rig, but I've heard from people on Facebook, and then I just think you guys are very reasonable in what you're doing for the quality of work that you're doing. So
we bill for the time that we put in. We don't just say it took us 4 hours, but we'll charge them 6 or 8 or something like that. Like, we bill for the time that we put in your boat. We do have menu pricing for some stuff, which makes it really easy. It's just if you're getting this is how much it costs to put it in, whether it takes us, 1 hour, whether it takes us 8 hours, which helps us out a lot with that, with getting quotes done, and then additional labor is just billed on as the hours accrue. So we're super fair with that. Usually we cut a couple hours off in the end because we like to take care of our customers and stuff like that. At the end of the day, we sell as the same prices as everybody else. There are actual restrictions to what you can sell stuff for from these big electronics companies, and our retail pricing is the same as everybody else's. So we're going to come out the same as everybody else. But the biggest difference with us is I had a kind of a customer of mine, I guess, get burned by it. Is when you buy the stuff through us, if you have a problem with it, we take care of it. We'll call Humminbird, we'll call Lowrance, we'll call whoever. We'll make sure you get it taken care of. Unfortunately, if you buy it somewhere else, you're kind of hung out to dry on it. And sometimes, manufacturers just don't want to work with you as a consumer. So we just make sure that our pricing is where it needs to be. We're the same price as everybody else. And, we make sure we take care of everybody.
So, you've kind of touched upon it here already, but kind of just go through the average, so someone's got their beloved boat, right? They finally have enough money to really get this thing rigged out. Go through the process. What can they expect working with you and your team?
So basically what we do is, kind of think about what you want, that most people have an idea in mind. You give us a call. You're going to get one of us. If you get Brian, who's our trolling motor guy, he'll hand a phone off to either me, Calvin, or Zach. And then, we basically ask, what do you got going on? What kind of boat do you have? What graphs do you have right now? What do you want? What if you're doing lithiums? What size batteries do you want? All this stuff. We basically get all your information down. Some guys just pull the trigger. A lot of guys just pull the trigger right on the phone. They're like, okay, yep, this is what I want. I like it. Put me on the schedule. And then some other guys want a quote. So then what we do is after we get off the phone with you, I basically have you email me or email the shop, kind of just a synopsis of what we talked about on the phone with all of your information. We type up a quote, we send it over to you. You can look it over. Then if you like it, we throw you on the schedule. Very rarely are we differential from what we quote because, again, with those menu pricing and with us doing so much work is we know what it's going to cost unless we add something, of course. But and then you bring the boat into us. One of the guys, whoever's going to be actually doing the work on the boat, or usually it's the person who you talk to on the phone, goes out there with a rig sheet, walks through everything, writes it all down, stands there with you in the boat. Like, do you want it here? Do you want it there? Where do you want all this stuff? How do you want it done? You drop the boat off with us. We get everything installed. We get everything done. You come pick it up from us. The same tech you worked with before was the same tech that was digging around in your boat. He goes over everything from you, answers any questions that you want. You pay your bill. You go out. You catch more fish.
Yeah, it's been a fantastic experience for me. I'm telling you, just my firsthand, this is the first time I've ever had a boat rigged, just ever rigged, but then especially rigged like this. Taylor and his crew have been fantastic. I don't mean this, I don't want this to sound like a commercial, right? Where there's no arrangement here. Getting to know Taylor more, I really respect his passion for fishing and his passion for what he's doing. And so I think when you encounter people like this, you got to really lift these people up. He doesn't need to be lifted up. Taylor's already, kicking butt, but I just feel like in my own little way, getting the word out and really just telling people how great a job you did and what you're doing there in Anoka, Minnesota. I want to help you as much as I can, and just get the word out about you. And it's, I think in many respects we're kind of like mind. We're kind of cut from the same cloth, definitely like multi-species wise. Love your passion for what you do. And so, we talked about doing this podcast not that long ago, and here we are doing it. So I'm glad that we're doing it. But like I said, dude, I could talk with you for a very long time, but I don't want to take up any more of your time. But that being said, so how do people get in contact with you to get their boat rigged?
The best way is to call us, 612-459-0064. That's a direct line to the shop. Speak with one of us. If you want to set up, a time to come in and talk to us, that's 100% fine too. Give us a call. We sell all major brands, Humminbird, Lowrance, Garmin. We are a full dealer of everything. We are also a Minn Kota authorized warranty center. We work on all trolling motors except now Motor Guy. They just kind of dropped the ball on us, but we work on all trolling motors. We only do electronics. We don't do any engine work, but we do jack plates and shallow water anchors and stuff like that. But yeah, the easiest way to get a hold of us is to call us. That way you get one of us, one-on-one with you. We'll walk you through whatever, and we'll get a plan, and we'll get you taken care of.
So to end, I do want to, just pick your brain a little bit. What do you see like coming down the pike with the technology? Is there anything that you see forward-facing sonar technology-wise, trolling motor-wise, fish finder-wise, even like power? You had talked, previously about how important just like power, like clean power is going to, and that we didn't really touch upon it that much on this podcast. But do you what are you seeing coming down the pike that's kind of exciting, or just even fishing in general?
So the biggest thing is stay away from weird voltage batteries. That's the biggest. If you take away anything from boat rigging on this, 16, 28, 32, 140. Those, I think, are starting to kind of get phased out. It was a fad. Not the right podcast to go into this on, but it just doesn't do what it's claimed to do. What I am seeing in the lithium battery market that's cool is the adoption of prismatic cells. For those of you that don't know, lithium batteries are essentially a bunch of like D-cell batteries arranged in a case, series in parallel to get you your battery power. Now more companies are using prismatic cells, which are, kind of like a notepad, and that allows you to get more power into a smaller battery. So one of the only lithium brand that we actually sell, which is Monster Marine, they're able to get a battery that is slightly bigger than a Group 31. They offer that size in a 12 volt, 344 amp hour, which will run any graph setup for days. And they offer a single 36 volt, 100 amp hour. Those are the two most exciting batteries that I've ever seen. I've got customers that have 6 graphs on their boat with 3 live scopes. They run for 3 days with that 344. That 100 amp hour 36 volt. I got a customer that goes up to Laxul for 4 days. He never charges his trolling motor. He comes back. He's at 40% on his battery.
Wow.
That's a really cool thing. I truly believe that at some point here we're going to see a live 360. So basically perspective mode, but live. The technology is actually already done. There's some implementation in the saltwater world, but there is a high frequency freshwater style transducer that is done, ready to go. It's just the cost is currently the issue with it.
You're saying a 360, like the Humminbird's 360, but technology.
100% live with the ability to pan. So you're not going to have to sweep anything. So you can cut pie pieces out for your forward, or you can just look at the whole thing as a fishbowl view and see everything in 360. So you can see the entire tree with the fish sitting in the tree from obviously whatever frontward angle spinning around that you want. Basically, it's a bunch of beams lined up like this in a row, and then it's a bunch of beams lined up like this in a row to get you a true three-dimensional image. And then we do have very shortly coming, there will be a higher definition black box from one of the companies that will bring full 4K live imaging to a sonar, which is just going to make the picture a little bit clearer. So that's really what's kind of coming and what I see. Obviously, I can get tricked and something else crazy can come down the pipeline. Who knows what those guys are working on, but it is an excited time to be fishing. Don't turn your head at live sonar if you're curious about it. It's a super fun tool. It's super fun to fish with. And, I love where technology is going because we're in the technology era. Everybody has a cell phone in their hands. We didn't have these, 20 years ago, just like everybody has live sonar in their boat. We didn't have them 20 years ago. So,
dude, Taylor is the absolute man. Just listen to him. He knows what he's talking about. He's super knowledgeable on electronics, on rigging, but you've heard it. He knows his shiz. I'm trying to not swear on this podcast. I have sworn on on this podcast before. Anyway. I'm nearly 50 years old. Having a sailor's mouth. It was cooler when I was younger. I'm trying to clean up my act here. But the guy knows his stuff is what I'm trying to tell you. And it's exciting because I love when and I've talked to you about this, Taylor, before, but I love to find people in the fishing industry that it's not just a job. You know what I mean? No, it's like you're wound up about it. This is your thing. And so that's what you get with this dude right here. And so you're insane, honestly, to go anywhere else to get your boat rigged if you're in Minnesota, as far as I'm concerned. So I'm high praises to Taylor. I hope to one day fish with the dude because, we've talked about doing some social media stuff together or whatever. Love to do that with you. I'd love to promote anything that you're up to. And just thank you so much for being on the podcast, dude.
No problem, buddy. It was a pleasure being here.